Okay, so we are ready to get started here. I do have with me, as you can see, Jeff Maffa, President and CEO of Oros Knowledge Systems, and he'll be talking on Knowledge Aware, the big and expanding picture. Very quick reminder, there is chat and polling in this session. We want to keep it engaging and look for those icons on the right side of your screen. We will save time to answer your questions at the end of Jeff's presentation. Keep them coming throughout. So now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Jeff Maffa.
Okay, let me just switch over here. Here we go. Well, it's tough to duplicate Amy's energy, but I'll do my best. As Amy said, this is the big and expanding presentation. I've done one of these the last few years, and it honestly is a lot of fun for me to do. Last year, I think, was the year we added the expanding part of this presentation. And that's really a reflection of because it has become clear that every year, through the contributions of many folks like yourselves, there's something new to talk about in the world of Knowledge Aware. And so we're calling it the expanding picture. I'll start off by framing up for you the traditional approach for managing knowledge, the library model. And in the age of digital transformation, I'll explain why that's more or less a dead end. I think I can make a compelling argument there, but that's for you to decide. And then I'll provide a brief explanation of what Knowledge Aware is and its unique properties and why it's so different. Hopefully you're looking for something that's different. That's why you've come to the conference today. And finally, I'll highlight two, to be specific, rather significant Knowledge Aware developments that have surfaced during 2021. And I'm happy to report also that there'll be some presentations tomorrow on these same developments. Okay. So with that, let's start off with kind of the old way, right? So this is the traditional problem and solution that I'm certain should resonate with you. We've discussed this with many companies and leaders like yourselves, and everybody said, yeah, that's us. So it goes something like this. In your company, you have processes because processes are what make companies efficient and can do better over time, right? So you have processes, whether it's hiring an employee, offboarding an employee, or having a phase gate design process, or buying off of a piece of equipment and getting it into production. We have processes, and we want to improve these processes over time. So what do? Well, we add key decisions or gateways to kind of monitor our progress through the process, right? Where's this decisions made? When are we going to assess our risk? And these gateways are, common in all of our processes. Then we decide, what, if we're going to get better, there's lots of different people learning stuff. We should write stuff down. So, we have some manufacturing standards written down over here in Excel and some design guides in PDF over here. And we have some checklists that are pointing to the design guides and the standards. And we got some CAD rules driving some CAD over here. And we have a custom app that does lessons learned. And we have procedures over here and requirements. And you get the picture, right? And so while this virtual searchable library is useful, the question is this really what we should be doing? Let's talk about the problem a little bit more. So now we enter your team, you or a team, and you have decisions to make as you're approaching a key decision or a gateway. And generally speaking, we're asking people to search. And as they search, there's a problem of processing the knowledge, understanding and applying. What happens? What do I use? What's still good? What's not good? When do I stop searching? Right? And this is a classical problem, but it's not the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is that after we find and read, what happens? How did it affect our decision? What did we actually consider and not consider when making a decision? This leap, this chasm between what we find and when we searched and what we actually did is a very big gap. And in the traditional model here, it's almost impossible to have a strong connection. Okay, so this model we affectionately call the library model. And I don't want to put anybody off who really loves their technical library, because technical libraries are really good. It's just in the age of digital transformation, not what's going to survive in terms of a viable process. And so, I just stole my own thunder here. Things have changed, and some of the companies represented here at the conference have proven this, right? And so This change is called knowledge aware, and this is what the concept behind the knowledge aware organization. And the organization has published this definition. It's a working definition. It's a comprehensive approach to continuously collect, deliver, and actively apply trusted knowledge within the flow of work. Okay, and I think you can start to see the differences of a library model and what knowledge aware says it is. But knowledge aware is actually really easy to explain. And many of you have heard this metaphor before. I'll go through it briefly here for those of you who haven't, but it pretty much sums it up. If you take a paper map as an analog for your virtual libraries that you ask people to search for, a paper map has all the terms you could possibly want. If I'm in a new city, it's useful to have a map, and I can search with my finger across the map and try to figure out where I want to go and then memorize the path or maybe highlight the path. But it's still this mass of all the things, and the map is only true or have content that's valid to the date it was printed, right? But that's not what we do today. Our kids don't have this experience, and our kids won't have that experience with your library model too for engineering knowledge. The experience now, at least in most of the cases, is around a system that's replaced paper maps. And the system is obviously navigation. And let's just kind of briefly talk about what's happening. There's a paper map have been replaced with a system where the units of cartography have been or the lines and arcs on a piece of paper have been replaced with a model that has been layered with metadata that allows us to provision into a system that understands where the roads are and what you're doing on the roads, right? So this allows us to see only the turn that's in front of us. Not all possible turns, but the turns in front of us. And we have a confidence of how up to date the map is. So that's important stuff. But the most important part, I think you'll agree, is that the system is able to know what I did with the map. How fast did I travel on the road? How fast is everybody else traveling? Did I take turns that were on there? Was I driving where there wasn't a road, right? And the system is able to take that data and turn it into better maps, into insights like traffic and ETA. Now imagine if your process of using knowledge was able to turn everybody's use of knowledge into insights, like what knowledge is still fresh, it's still up to date, what knowledge needs to be looked at, how much risk is in a particular project, right? This is what can happen when you unlock the knowledge aware process. Okay, so what we're saying, what's different, it's the same as what maps did to, or what navigation did to maps, is that we're going to take the library and we're going to change the representation of knowledge from the container of a document, and we're going to manage it directly in a purpose-built unit of knowledge that knowledge aware calls a knowledge packet, okay? And these are granular, modular, actionable units of knowledge. And it is far easier to manage a knowledge packet than a document. There's a tremendous amount of overhead and weight associated with document that you don't have with a knowledge packet, and there's a lot more value and understanding of what's happening when you use a knowledge packet. So that's kind of the first idea. The second idea is this idea that we introduced last year at the Knowledge Aware Conference, and it's the Knowledge Aware cycle. And really, Knowledge Aware isn't just about replacing a document, it's about a cycle of learning, a continuous process. So if we think about it in 4 steps, we have a knowledge packet. That's how we capture and construct in granular, modular, actionable units called knowledge packets. And excuse me, I'm going to go and show you a few OROS IQ screens which represent knowledge packets, but there are ways to do this without OROS IQ. But here's a knowledge packet representing a typical kind of engineering constraint. It's modular, it's actionable, and it's granular. It has purpose-built technology like this vitality algorithm, which basically is measuring the health of the unit of knowledge in the same way that navigation is able to produce an ETA characteristic. We can produce a health characteristic of units of knowledge that you can't if you don't understand what's happening to the knowledge when it gets reused. Okay, and some other knowledge packets here, just different styles and different kinds of knowledge, capturing different kinds of knowledge. And the next step of the knowledge aware process is not to ask people to search, but to get context and then provision based on that context. You're building a certain kind of assembly, you're installing a certain kind of equipment, you're onboarding a certain kind of employee. We're going to provision the knowledge packets from the different stakeholders, their knowledge. Instead of asking you to read their documents, we're going to provision their units of knowledge, and then we're going to activate them from within the flow of work with a tool called an assessment control. An assessment control understands the modularity of the knowledge packet. And in this view, really what we're looking at is each row in this assessment control is a unit or knowledge packet that's been provisioned based on context. And it's going to track and help the team apply with rigor the knowledge and track how fast are they going, what turns are they taking, to use the navigation metaphor, right? And it's going to take that data and then produce insights like the vitality of the knowledge packet. But the kinds of assessments you might encounter are different depending on the kind of process that you're basically making knowledge aware. Here's one that's parameter oriented, typically in a CAD type situation or digital model situation, you might see one of these. And then in development process and process oriented processes, knowledge takes the form of processes. And so you may have assessment that's evaluating and tracking process, right? It's the same concept, just different types of units of knowledge that have been provisioned. And finally, also what we introduced last year was this idea is we can understand what's happening to the knowledge through this activation process, and we can take that data, use AI, and create learning opportunities. And in that step, we learn and adapt knowledge to create new knowledge, right? And we showed you these ideas of learning cycles and learning opportunities that are digitally curated process based on past data about what we might have learned and get humans involved to create new learning, right? And this is a robust and closed loop process that we would not have available to us without something similar to knowledge aware. Okay, so on this slide, there isn't anything new, but I'm going to show you kind of a different way of looking at that same thing. Okay, so here's your process. So instead of showing it as a linear thing with milestones, I'm going to show it as like a road, because the road is changing, context is changing, and you're coming to a gateway or a key decision, right? Let's say you're going to develop a certain kind of assembly, and you're at the first phase, you're at the concept phase. Well, in the concept phase, you may provision in customer requirements, government regulations, design for manufacturability, design for serviceability. All these different stakeholders may contribute these units of knowledge, and the assessment control makes efficient the process of applying, understanding, and communicating back to the stakeholders what's happened, making better decisions in real time. Okay, and then as context changes, just like your cell phone is telling you that a different turn as your context changed, this provisioning of knowledge packets and assessment is changing continuously with that process. Okay, so this is the same idea, just a different picture. I'm going to switch gears. So that's knowledge aware, kind of basically what it is. Hopefully you find it compelling. And I want to talk about now my favorite topic, what's new? What was new last year in knowledge aware? Okay, so in the past few years, this is what we've explained as the expanding part. So in 2016 or 2015, thereabouts, we introduced this knowledge aware maturity model. What's a model that we can use that explains what phase of knowledge aware are you in, from very passive library to very active provisioned knowledge, kind of are the two extremes there. Passive searched for library versus active provision is really the two primary measures of knowledge aware maturity. Greg Burek a couple of years ago presented it, and 3 years ago approximately, we started with the metaphor of navigation to explain knowledge aware, so you can help to explain it to others. That the navigation knowledge aware is similar to the librarying model as navigation was to paper maps. And some of you probably heard this presentation enough times that you got it down cold. 2019, we introduced the knowledge flows. Now, I haven't really had the opportunity to present this to too many people, but I believe this is an important series of messages on knowledge aware, on where does knowledge come from, how does it come bottom up, how does it work with requirements, how does it work with expertise from outside your company, and how does it get into the digital transformation arena. And that's the knowledge flows concept. If anybody would like to hear more about that, I'd be more than happy to go through that presentation. It's a very good, useful model to help further understand knowledge aware from a different perspective. Last year, we talked about this idea of knowledge aware learning cycles, kind of what I was talking about, closing that loop, and how AI assists us in doing that. And we talked about that a lot last year. We showed examples of learning cycles, what kind of data and what kind of AI do we use in doing that. And lastly, last year we also talked about knowledge operating system. So in 2021 and to 2020, we've been developing this idea of knowledge operating system a little bit more. How does that fit into the knowledge aware idea? I think there's a place for it, but it's still work in progress. Okay, so the two primary trends are fairly, to me, are exciting that we saw in 2021 so far. The two trends are the ascent of knowledge models in knowledge packets, and I'll talk about that in a little more detail. And the second trend is the integration of supply chain. So real quick, I want to circle back and show you a vision slide before there was a knowledge aware. So this was a vision slide that our previous company, Merchant Systems, and a previous technology called E2KS. Some of you Ford people probably remember that name, some of you General Motors as well. But this is a prior generation of the technology. And in this vision, it set out, hey, you can put knowledge on the web in these discrete units, and then you can take those units, and from a single representation, you can create design guides and checklists and e-learning documents and specifications. And for the last, 10 years, this vision of doing this kind of thing has been pretty much the staple of what became knowledge aware. But in 2016, 17, we started to really see the ascension of taking these digital representations of knowledge and automating their application within digital environments. And as we progress in our digital transformation strategies, this is clearly on the ascent. And that has taken hold quite a bit in 2021. I'll get into it more in a second. But the other one I just want to share with you, all the way back as far as 2005, 2006, we were talking about extended enterprise knowledge sharing. Does a supplier exchange knowledge with its OEM, and does the OEM exchange knowledge with its supplier, up and down the supply chain? So the trend we see in 2021 is the replacement of passive text in a knowledge packet with knowledge models. So we've always said this was a thing in knowledge aware, but what we saw in 2021 is a very quickly accelerating trend to replace passive text with where the fundamental representation of knowledge is a model. The graphic here implies a process model, but it doesn't have to be that. I'll show you. And with knowledge modeling, you get more explicit and complete knowledge capture, unambiguous knowledge capture. In text, it's always ambiguous. There's so many stories I can tell you about that. You get much higher fidelity reuse if applying a knowledge does not allow the wiggle room that text-based representations have. Digital ready, as we want to convey them to CAD or convey them to any set of digital models, we can now connect them. And I'll just show you a few pictures here where the circle around the orange is around the model part of the knowledge packet, this granular modular actionable unit of knowledge. And here, this flowchart is actually a model of process, in this case, a model of decision. And these are activated, and users interact with these models in a far different and more robust way than they would just reading text. The second trend here is this idea of extended enterprise. So I said this went all the way back to 2005, 2006, this idea of how knowledge might be exchanged within the enterprise. And I'm super excited because tomorrow, General Motors is giving a presentation on this topic. Stellantis is giving a presentation relevant to this topic. So within the last 12 to 20 months, we've gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour on supply chain integration in the knowledge aware process. So once you do this, you can reduce the costs and risks associated with the knowledge barriers that are associated with enterprise walls, right? And if you start to exchange knowledge freely in the same way that you might do within your company, respecting intellectual property rights, of course, but you can imagine how that might positively impact your ability to compete. Right, and that creates a more valuable supply chain, which results in a more valuable company. So Again, a little plugging here for Oros IQ. In Oros IQ, we have something called a partner portal, and I'm not going to steal Susan Bachman's thunder from tomorrow, but this is a way where your company can engage its suppliers in doing knowledge-aware type things. This is an assessment view. They can do assessments, evaluate your knowledge packets, or in this case, this is an issues view. How can you exchange issues seamlessly across enterprise boundaries, share them, work on them jointly, understand progress? And again, Susan's going to talk much more about that tomorrow, so please come to her presentation. Okay, so at this point, that's kind of what's new. Really, this idea of we see the transition of text-based knowledge packets to really far more frequent model-based knowledge packets, interaction with an assessment control on a model level, not on a text attestation level, and this now real production usage of extended enterprise knowledge sharing. Okay, so that's what we have for Knowledge Aware in 2021. I now present the polling question. So let me go ahead and bring the polling question out. And the polling question is, you should be able to see the polling question on the side of your panel. And as we start to take the poll, if you don't mind, can you take the question, how valuable is knowledge modeling in a knowledge packet? Or do I have the wrong one? You can, nevertheless, you can see the results of the poll. Let me bring that up myself. Oh, I'm sorry, I had the wrong question. The question is, the vision for Knowledge Aware is compelling. I agree and want to be involved. I somewhat agree, I need to learn more, or I disagree, not sure why I'm here. So could you take the poll?
Yeah, and Jeff, just as a side note, I had to enter a vote in order to see the results. So I just wonder if that may be the case for everyone. So we have 55 votes in already.
Okay.
Are you seeing the results?
I am not.
Okay, because it's on the right side of this window where I am on the bar graph. And again, I did go ahead and vote in order to see the results. So of course I voted that I agree and want to be involved.
I do see it now. So
yes.
What I see is 77%
yes.
agree and want to be involved. 23, I somewhat agree and need to learn more. And I'm actually surprised there are no votes for I disagree, not sure why I'm here. Because usually there's a wiseacre out there that wants to put that in there. At least one, but not this time.
Well, that's good, right? We like these results. Or does it stump you? You wanted to counteract the negative Nellies.
87, that's great. Amy, were you able to see my presentation as I was going?
Yes.
You were, okay, good.
Yes, I was. And I haven't heard anything that, there were any issues, technically speaking. So I think I would.
Well, let's move on.
Okay, great. Well, why don't we go to, okay, there were some comments. I was in the poll. Okay, so yeah, so William was asking, I know this one got a couple likes. He was wondering, William from General Motors, can you share the Knowledge Flows presentation?
I can. I'd be more than happy to do a session with you, or I can just send you the presentation, whatever you like. If you can contact me on my email, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. For those that are ready for that message, it is it really can unlock kind of the connection of knowledge all around an organization and how it all comes together, especially in the age of digital transformation.
Perfect. I'm sure that will be much appreciated. Mauro from ZF says, Jeff always has great visuals and engaging presentations. Great start. So I guess they could see your visuals.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I had a question here come in. Knowledge Aware seems to have been around for a while. Why hasn't it grown faster?
Maybe that's a trick question. I would ask, isn't it growing quickly? So let's unpack that. So the measuring stick of quick or slow really depends on what you're measuring it against, I guess. And if you think of something maybe like process control, I mean, some of you manufacturing engineers out there and thinking about Deming here, how long did it take manufacturing really to embrace the idea of process control? And I'm not talking about just specifically SPC, but process control, right? It had to go to Japan and then back. And it was years, 20 years or so, right? For process control really to be kind of accepted as standard business. Another one more recent maybe is agile, right? So we all have heard agile every day. So how long did it take agile to kind of take hold? Well, I know that the Agile Manifesto was written in 2001, and I'm guessing that there was a lot of things written and practiced before that was written. So agile goes back, and maybe some of you know a lot more than I do, but I'm guessing it goes back into the 90s, well into the 90s. And it takes time for change, right? It really does. And the way we measure we can measure the acceleration of our moving forward, right? The conference attendance here, right? We started with 17 people, we had 250 or so register. The number of users of tools like Oros IQ has exponentially grown, and it's getting bigger, even within big known companies like General Motors. Nicole Nicholas gave a presentation last year that kind of gave us the numbers of how fast it's growing and continues to grow, right? So all the measurements indicate very quick growth. But I'd like to say one last thing about this question, in that we can all look at Knowledge Aware, understand it to be, something better, and it's coming. But because of the natural hesitancy to change, it's still at a stage where it takes a hero to make it work. So I'll just put my friends at General Motors on the spot, right? So it takes a hero like Wendy and Christine, who kind of run the show in knowledge management, and then Suzanne to kind of help the company, and Nicole Nicholas and Jerry and Daryl and Mike and all these people that had to embrace change to get an organization to change. And at some point, it won't require heroic. It won't require the hero role. But we're still encounter knowledge aware concept still is different enough that people have to let go of their library past and really understand the digital future. And that still takes a change agent. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thanks, Jeff, and thank you for joining this session, everyone. I want to let you know I just pasted a survey. This will become a routine. I'll do this at the end of every session. So a survey link is in the chat right now. So if you would just take a moment to click on that and give a quick rating, we really do value your feedback. And remember, you can reach out to Jeff directly if you end up having questions that you think of later. So go ahead, fill out that survey. The session will end in a minute, and then you'll have about 5 minutes before we meet back. Well, actually, we're heading to our breakout session. So you'll pick whether you want the beginner or advanced track for breakout session 1 at 1:45 p.m. Eastern. And in the meantime, you can check out sponsors in the virtual booths, chat with other attendees, with sponsors, or in groups. All right, thanks, everyone. See you at 1:45 in breakouts.